Hey, football fans, welcome back to another episode of Lions Latest, the show where we gather around and talk about the greatest team in the NFL, the Detroit Lions. I'm your host, Bryan Hanes, and we have some very important news to go over for this week, so let's jump into this video. But beforehand, if you're not already, you guys have been sticking around, you guys have been enjoying the videos, enjoying the content, make sure you guys subscribe, right? Right. We're almost to, well, not almost, but we're on our way to 2K, and then 5K is our next big milestone. I'd love to have you guys here along for the ride, so make sure you do that if you haven't already. With that being said, let's get into the video. Starting off, things are getting worse. Horrible news ahead of us waiving our backup corners, like Nick Whiteside. Terrion Arnold and the Detroit Lions training staff decided to let the second-year cornerback play on an injured shoulder after he had already missed time due to the affliction and after suffering a recent concussion, followed by inflaming the same shoulder injury again. The defender is now out for the year, opting to finally surgically repair the shoulder he has been dealing with all season. So what can be said? You obviously want to let him heal the shoulder. You don't want him to play on a hurt shoulder, because that's bad coaching. But that sucks. That really sucks. If things couldn't get worse, right? Ragnow's not coming back. We're not playing great. Now one of our starting corners we just got back is out for the whole season. That's no good. What was once a seemingly season-ending injury for Arnold just became a bump that he had to mend for a few weeks, and now we're just back to square one, especially now that Kirby Joseph is still out. He after the Kansas City Chiefs, he went from having a manageable knee injury to also being seemingly out for the rest of the year, even though he is finally getting back into those reps. We talked about the bone bruise and what that could mean for his season. They have to host the Dallas Cowboys this week, a team that has been surrounded by good players. Dak is playing almost like an MVP level quarterback. He's got George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb down the field. They looked pretty gross, I'm not gonna lie. And Detroit has next to no depth at cornerback or safety position left this season, save some for the practice squad, elevations, people who have contributed here and there, but we've let go a few guys as well. They will have to likely look to the free agency and the draft to reshape these rooms, especially if Kirby Joseph's injury appears to be as bad as we think. If this carries on into next season, he's still missing games. That could be really bad for our plan in that secondary. Yeah, guys, there's not a whole lot to say on it. Kirby Joseph being out sucks. Terrion Arnold being out for the rest of the season sucks. We're going to need the Legion of Whom to step up again, even though some of those guys are gone. And it's going to be on our offense, which really hasn't been clicking the way we've wanted to this year. I think Arnold, the worst part about it is Arnold was really starting to show some bright spots. Good passes defended. He got his first interception this year. But it's one of those things where we're finally developing him, and now we're going to have to take a few steps back. And he's going into his third year next year. Some of that development time is really getting away from him, and it's starting to look pretty disappointing. Not necessarily for Arnold, just for the situation he was in. So hopefully he gets back soon, and hopefully we can continue to develop that talent that he's got. Now talking about the Cowboys, because I feel like this kind of goes well into this discussion. So the Lions are 7-5, Cowboys are 6-5-1. They're going to square off this week on Thursday, not getting any extra time for this match in terms of the Lions or the Cowboys. And heading into this game, the two teams have looked vastly different. Over the last 3 weeks, the Lions have lost to the Eagles, the Packers, and needed overtime to take care of business against the Giants. Meanwhile, the Cowboys are 3-0 over the same period, getting rid of the Eagles, the Chiefs, and the Raiders. So the Raiders, whatever. But Eagles and Chiefs, they had some really great games against them. Despite this, the Lions are actually still favored at negative 3.5 points because we're at home, I guess. Last year's beating maybe still lingering. But it's been over 3 years since the Lions have lost 2 games in a row. Week 8 of 2022. However, we're going to need to really dig deep in order to keep that streak alive this week. Dan Campbell said, quote, "Our margin for error is very small right now. So, of course, we've got to find a way to win, and we want to win. I think I got to go back to this. We just lost one. We're going to find a way to win this next one in front of us. And yeah, I mean, time's running out. It's all about finding a way to win the game. But I've also been in these spots before where we've got counted out because I was a player in 2002. We lost 2 in a row, and we were almost mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. That was all the writing. And then we went out, won, and got it. So You just, man, you got to find a way to win the one that's in front of you and don't get caught up in the rest of the stuff. That's the bottom line. We're in business to win. We're trying to win. We've got to win. End quote. Honestly, sick quote from Dan Campbell. He's been there before. He knows what it takes. He knows the Cowboys want our number. And with all this other business in the air about the playoffs and how we're looking for the postseason, he's saying, hey, we just got to focus on this right now. We can't get our minds too cluttered. We just got to prepare for this game ahead of us. And I love that. That's great. That is a great way to look at it as a coach. Now, getting hyped for it, preparing yourself for it, that's awesome. But actually doing is going to be the hard part. The Cowboys offense is rolling right now. They average 29.3 points per game, which is third in the NFL. They've scored 31, 24, and 33 points in their last 3 games. And they also head to Detroit, possibly seeking retribution for last year when the Lions went into Dallas and smacked them around, giving them a score of 47-9. So there's a lot into this game. It's a bit of a retribution game for the Cowboys. It's a game for us where we need to win to keep our playoff hopes alive, and we don't want to break that streak we've had since 2022. I'm afraid of George Pickens. I'm just going to say it. CeeDee Lamb is obviously going to be a weapon as well, but George Pickens is having some crazy kind of turnaround year in Dallas, and now that Terrion's out, now that we've waived some of our other backup guys, now that the depth in our secondary isn't looking that great, I'm afraid CeeDee Lamb is going to get double teamed on so many plays, and George Pickens is going to get these one-on-ones and just do what he's been doing all season, mossing guys, jumping over guys, making crazy yards after the catch plays. I mean, I am truly worried about what he is going to do to us. Now, with that being said, our defensive line, in theory, should be able to get to Dak often. I'm hoping that is the case, right? They were very quiet last game against the Packers. Jordan Love was able to set up whatever he wanted to do in that pocket. He was able to, put a lease on it because he was living there. If we can get to Dak and make Dak uncomfortable, Dak will do Dak things. Brian Branch might have the game he had last year against him. We're going to need him to with Joseph probably not playing. But it is a scary game. It really is. I think their offense is rolling, and they're high up on what they've been doing recently, and they got all the momentum in their corner, so to say. They're coming into our house wanting to do what we did to them last year, and we're going to have to stand strong defensively. Now, offensively, it's a different story. One of our guys is dealing with an injury. We'll talk about that in just a second, but we're going to need to roll on offense. Our offensive line is going to have to play the best game of the season for Goff to be able to do what he wants to do against the Dallas defense. And if they can't do that, and if Goff's getting hit the whole game, I'm not saying I'm going to turn the TV off. I'm just saying there's a good chance I lose my mind a little bit. But we'll have to see what happens. This is a very highly anticipated game, and I'm quite excited to see what we'll do. There'll be more news on this game throughout the week. I'll get you guys some matchups in a later video. And now, kind of just going on what we were talking about, St. Brown. Now, this is going to be a huge part of our game, and if he's not here, guys are going to have to step up. On Thanksgiving, the Lions didn't just lose the game against the Packers. We also lost one of our key offensive players, which could have probably led to that loss. Wide receiver Amon-Ra St. Brown exited the game in the first quarter after suffering an ankle injury when a lineman rolled on his leg from behind as he was engaged in blocking a defender. Yeah, it was kind of a gross-looking injury, but he seemed to be all right for the most part. St. Brown was able to walk off the field under his own power, but quickly headed to the locker room. He was walking with a slight limp and was ruled out for the remainder of the contest after being initially deemed questionable to return. So that sucked. It's a lot of that sucked in this video, but I think that's where we are right now in the season. That wasn't a good thing whatsoever. I think that's obvious. But going forward, what that injury would mean in the next few weeks was the most important thing. St. Brown's injury doesn't appear to be long-term. That said, with the team playing a second consecutive Thursday game, his status entering week 14 will bear watching as the Lions look to work their way back into the playoff picture. And the Lions have not announced whether St. Brown will be playing for the team yet against the Cowboys, but St. Brown didn't practice on December 1st, according to the Lions injury report. And while St. Brown is considered week to week because of the ankle injury, Pelissero reports the 26-year-old receiver should avoid being placed on injury reserve, which will at least save us those 4 games he has to wait, right? That means the Lions expect St. Brown to return to action without having to miss a minimum of 4 games, required by the stint, and hopefully he just returns this week, taped up. As long as St. Brown remains out of action, it's going to be J-Mo as Golf's main target. To be fair, J-Mo stepped up last week, but it will take more than him. It's going to take more than him. And some of these other guys did show up as well, but we need them to do it a lot more in terms of receptions and getting open more frequently than 2 or 3 times. Rookie receiver Isaac Tesla will need to show up as that unofficial wide receiver too if this happens. He was pretty good last week. He got a touchdown catch. He was open a few times. He got involved, but we're going to need to see him involved a lot more as a wide receiver too. Let's talk about last year's game though. So if J-Mo does have to be wide receiver 1, that's not all bad things. Last year, J-Mo was the top receiver against Dallas, getting 3 catches for 76 yards and a touchdown. However, St. Brown was there to help as well. He had 4 catches for 37 yards and a touchdown. It looks like we might need them both to beat this rolling Dallas team right now. But it's going to be tough to say. St. Brown being in makes our team immediately better. He makes an immediate impact, and that's why he's a star in this league. Him being in will mean better chances on third downs. Well, theoretically, we haven't really done a great job of it this season, but better chances at third downs, better chances in the red zone, better chances when there's situations where you just got to throw it up to your guy and hope he comes down with it. He is just a playmaker. Having him out means we're going to have less playmaking abilities. And that's not saying I have no faith in J-Mo, but St. Brown is he's Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's been our guy for the last 3 years. We're gonna need him, and not just for this game, but we're gonna need him for the rest of the year if we even want to get into the playoffs and if we even want to perform. Then remember, we still got to go to the Rams and play them. That's not going to be an easy task. There's a lot of revenge games coming up for teams against us. We're going to have to be at our best, and right now it just doesn't look like we are. Hopefully St. Brown comes back. Hopefully that injury isn't too bad, and if he doesn't, we're going to need those other receivers to step up anyways. Let me know what you guys think about that. That'll finally take us to comments. Starting with Ron PD7JM says, last season Montgomery was the starter and set the tone for the running game. Power running into the line, wearing down the defense. He was used sporadically today. Not enough. I don't remember exactly how many times they ran on 4th down last week, but none were with Gibbs. I like Gibbs very much, but remember how Montgomery made 4th down runs last year and more than most were successful. I was very surprised Campbell didn't go back to that. Failure to make 4th downs cost the Lions the game. Maybe Campbell should quit calling offensive plays. Just a suggestion. And I like that you separate this into 2 topics, because with Campbell calling plays, I mean, pick your poison. Campbell or Morton. One guy was running boring, easy to read offense. The other guy was kind of sticking to his guns, but he's not the offensive coordinator. So when he makes mistakes, we can't be insanely disappointed with him, right? Even though I expect Campbell to know the team better than his coordinators. With that being said, I like Gibbs too. I like him a lot. I think our 4th down attempts killed us last week. I think we need to start taking some chances to put points on the board, which can lead to a win later in the game. Because we have opportunities to score points. We just choose to do what we've been doing, and a lot of teams have our number on that. A lot of teams know what we want to do. We need to start switching it up a little more. It worked so effectively before when teams weren't sure of what was going to come out of our backfield. Now everyone kind of knows they're going to give it to one of those 2 backs to get a yard or 2. I think it's a tricky situation, and I don't think we're necessarily in the spot to give those answers right now. I think we're going to have to go shopping for maybe some staff positions this offseason, maybe a couple other guys for the defense, maybe a couple of other linemen. I know that for sure. So we're going to have to wait and see, but I appreciate your comment, Ron PD. Next is Dogface Soldier, who says, I'm a Cowboys fan, and this one will be easy for you guys. Dak will be Dak in big games. Now, I don't want to just go, yeah, of course, because then that leads to the Lions losing, of course. Remember, we took the Giants to overtime. We lost to this Vikings team who just gave the Seahawks defense like 25 points in fantasy. Now, I'd love that to happen. And yes, Dak tends to choke a little bit in some big games, but I don't know. This to me doesn't look like that Dak. He's throwing a pick once in a while. He's making some bad reads once in a while. But he makes up for those with bombs to George Pickens, bombs to CeeDee Lamb. He's been very good in the red zone. Dak looks better this year than he did last year. And I think it's because he's got some more weapons on his side, which a lot of people didn't expect. Everyone thought the Cowboys were going to be buns this year. So I'm hoping you're right, Dogface Soldier, but never going to underestimate an opponent. with that being said, we are out of time today. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Lions Latest. If you made it to this point of the video, tell me what your opinions are, what your predictions are for Terrion being out, and what do you think the staff's going to do next to address that. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell so you never miss a single video here. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you in the next video.